What's up, everybody? Good to see everybody today. Thank you guys for joining us for today's webinar. I'm happy to be here. Lacy, are you happy to be here? I see that
I
smile.
am. I am.
Yeah, Lacy's like, let's go. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be awesome. Hey, my name is Louie. I'm on staff with ICN, and if this is one of your first times interacting with ICN, we are a network of churches all around the world that are intent on creating irresistible churches that are designed to engage unchurched people and inspire them to follow Jesus. So that's what we're all about, and part of that is we just love helping, loving on church leaders and helping church leaders and equipping them to go further faster, especially when it comes to designing their churches to engage unchurched people and inspire them to follow Jesus. And so when we talk about irresistible churches, there are many aspects of that. We have seven irresistible distinctives, ICN distinctives that we talk about a lot. One of those is intentional relationships. And that's kind of be the one we're going to be zoned in on today. You've heard us say things like circles are better than rows and things like that. So that's the area we're going to be talking about today. However, the reason why we're kind of talking about this today is because there's always times in all of our ministries and lives for iteration and innovation and rethinking things. And we absolutely are sold out for intentional relationships and that circles are better than rows. But today we're going to be tackling a topic that is of this webinar that is beyond circles, reimagining relational discipleship. So we're going to be looking at kind of the next iteration of circles are better than rows. What does it really mean to build these intentional relationships in our churches, and focus on relational discipleship? And so, because of that, we are asking one of the best in our network, Lacy Wagler, to join us today. Lacy is the lead pastor, co-lead pastor with her husband John Wagler there at Hill City Church in Richmond, Virginia, and she is going to be joining us today to bat around this topic a little bit. So, Lacy, you want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your family real quick, just to bring them all up to speed?
Sure thing. Hey, everybody. I told Louis this, but I'm feeling great because I just got a call right before this that I don't have to show up for jury duty tomorrow. So the day is looking great. My husband and I, like Louis said, are in Richmond, Virginia. We planted Hill City Church almost 11 years ago, about to celebrate our 11th birthday. We have almost 17-year-old twins and almost 8-year-old. So parenting on both ends of the spectrum there right now. And our family fun fact is that all three of our children have the same birthday.
Okay, I think I am frozen here. Can you hear me still?
We can hear you, but you are
Okay.
frozen.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep rolling even if I'm
You're
if I'm frozen. So thank you for that intro, Lacy. So just to bring everybody up to speed, what we're going to do today is I'm going to interview Lacy for a few minutes, and then we're going to open it up as a Q&A for the rest of you guys. So all throughout my conversation with Lacy, feel free to throw your questions into the chat, and our team will get those to us at the end for the Q&A. So don't wait on anything. As soon as you think of a question, as soon as you hear something you want to know more about, throw that question in the chat. And Lacy and I are just going to have a conversation today that's practical, honest. This is an in the trenches, real life, real church, real ministry conversation. This is not theoretical. This is about what Lacy and her team are doing on the ground there at Hill City Church. So before we jump into that, though, Lacy, I couldn't help when you mentioned jury duty. I've never had jury duty. I've always secretly kind of wanted, just because I wanted to stand up and yell like you can't handle the truth or something like that. So, but I've never had the opportunity. So maybe one day if I
Still got a
keep.
couple weeks left where they can call me in. So
Exactly. Well, cool. So as we jump into this, Lacy, I would love for you just to kind of set the stage for everybody when it comes to relational discipleship, what it has looked like historically at your church. Maybe give us a snapshot of your church's context, the community it's in, and how discipleship has looked historically at Hill City through the years.
okay, yeah. So like I said, we are a church plant. And so in the beginning, there's just that big startup energy and a big focus on Sundays because we didn't have any people to put in
Yeah.
small groups. And so there was that focus for us. We ended up having small groups, but just kind of let those be. They were not, admittedly, they were not where our focus was as leaders. And we just assumed great stuff would happen when people got together. And great stuff did happen, but not that was like quantifiable or like as we kept kind of maturing as a church, what we kept sensing was we're like, this doesn't quite feel like us, the way that we're doing small groups. Good things are happening, but we just feel like it wasn't who we were as a church and who we needed to be. And so this kind of growing like angst happened in both John and I about what this area of our church needed to look like and how it needed to feel like our community. We have it was a very young church then in age as well. And we have like what all of our churches want to have. We had tons of people coming in that were brand new to faith or not following Jesus yet that just had a ton of questions. And
Mhm.
so we started noticing we're like, oh, we're experiencing a lot of growth and we don't have enough people to disciple these new people that are coming in. And so we prayed for God to bring mature people, old people, just all the people to come help with all these new folks coming in. Um, and then it that kind of angst turned into a bigger burden for us. There were a couple things along the way that hit us really, really hard. One of them, I'm sure many of you on here have heard of or read the book Emotional Healthy Spirituality, but we read that as a staff early on, and this question in it was one that just kind of like stuck to my bones. It was, are you a 20-year-old Christian or a 1-year-old Christian 20 times in a row?
Ooh.
And but then when we thought about that, we're like, oh, we have a real big responsibility here. And we actually think we're producing the 1-year-old Christians over and over again. Um, and so something has to shift because that responsibility of picturing Jesus saying, like, hey, you actually never knew me. It weighed on us a lot. And so anyway, that kind of caused us to really pause to be like, okay, we need to kind of rethink our strategy. And one of the sparks that helped us rethink that was one was this question from Dallas Willard, these two questions. He said the only two questions churches ever need to ask is what are you doing for discipleship and is it working? And so we started asking ourselves those questions. And the answers were really like we don't really know to both of those. And so then we had this older woman at our church who spent her career just training companies on how to use software. And I am obsessed with like experience design and making things better and making them fun. And so we had a couple different environments of like where people were joining the team or some team trainings that she was a part of. And she pulled me aside and she was like, hey, can I give you like a little tutorial on adult learning? I was like, of course. And so she sat me down and I still could rattle off all the things that she told me in that meeting because she taught me while using her methods of how adults learn. And so I remembered. And so anyway, that sparked an interest of that then became an obsession about how do adults learn? What is instructional design? How do we create environments where people are actually changing? Because one of the things that Carol Brown is her name. What she said was learning equals change. And so we're like, you can tell people things all day long, but if there's not change, then there's not real learning. So those are some of the things that really propelled us into shifting what we do.
Yeah, I love that. I love both of those things. I love that's one thing I love about our network is that we have all these little discipleship labs all
Ah,
over. We're like, we're figuring this out. We're figuring this out. We're changing this. We're seeing this differently now, and we can learn from each other. So I love that. So thankful for you guys, Lacy. So if those are things that sparked everything, kind of got the wheels turning, maybe we should rethink this. Maybe we should do something different. Maybe we should make some changes. Um, you know, what is it? Tell us, maybe describe some of the current practices or environments that you're using right now that go beyond what we would call the traditional small group model.
okay. Yeah, I think to start, the biggest shift for us was it's actually a shift in culture. And so culture is the lived experience that people have, right? And so we want the culture of our church and of our churches to be one where people are organizing their lives around Jesus. Like it is part of the culture that this is what we do, we grow. And so the first thing was that really is what started to shift in us
Okay.
as leaders and our staff. And so shifting the culture was the biggest thing because then we are aligned on like where we're headed and vision, and our strategy can follow. But really, it's like discipleship is kind of the answer to all the problems that we have at church.
Yeah.
And so, as we're thinking
You mean
through,
like the problems like we need more volunteers, we need more people to give and fund the ministry. We need yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with
yep,
you.
those are at the top of the list. Yeah, like those discipleship issues, right? It's people organizing their lives around faith. And so the shift for us was like, we started talking about it all the time. We've always really focused on it on our staff, but it was a more intentional push there. Our language at church changed. Now you will hear people just talking in the lobby about what tracks they're taking, what they're learning. Like it's kind of in the water now. And so if anybody takes something away, I would say like the culture shift is actually has made the biggest difference for us. Um, and then, we built strategy around that too.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
that makes sense though, because if you just start with you just switch a strategy or change to a different program or now go attend this instead of attending that without addressing the culture problem and changing the culture. Yeah, yeah, it's just another thing to attend, a
right.
group, a class, whatever it is. So I see that. Okay, so that makes total sense. Shifting the culture is the key piece to everything. So with that in mind, what strategy have you developed around that new culture?
Yeah, so I would say ours is like a more of a track model. So there are still groups. We think about them and interact with the groups a little bit differently than we used to with the traditional model. So we now have 9 tracks that people can choose from, and each track just kind of focuses on a different area, maybe a stage of faith or a different dynamic of faith to focus on and grow in. When we started with 3 tracks. Um, but now we have 9. And so people are put in tracks. They go from September to May. And each group has 6 to 8 people with 2 coaches in them. And they're made up of 3 sessions. And, we have like a whole built-in calendar that they all follow. But there is like homework. There's homework, there's projects. We really upped the level of commitment that we have in these, and there's a high bar of expectation of like what people are putting into them.
Yeah.
I would say one of the biggest differences is that when people are interacting with content, we actually that's the homework is they take in the content at home on their own time, and then when they come together, that's when they process it. So instead of like, hey, we're gonna read this together in a group or watch this video, that's all happened before. And then our coaches are given essentially lesson plans. So we map out what the time spent together in the group looks like. They have some freedom within that because we trust them and they know their groups and all of that. But we've made it a consistent experience throughout all the groups.
Okay. I love that. Okay, that's a lot. So if you guys have questions
Right.
about that, throw your questions in the chat and if you want to unpack any of that stuff that Lacy just said individually, we can do that in the Q&A. So, Lacy, so how did you guys land on that stuff, like the tracks and the specific approach and all that stuff? Was that a lot of that come out of the adult learning theory conversation you had, or like what was your process or framework you used to run it through a grid and go, let's start here? I love how you said we started with 3, not 9, so people know you can build
Right.
this thing. You have to start at your finished product. But yeah, how did you guys land there? What was the process that you guys went through to get
Yeah,
there?
we started. we knew we wanted to switch everything up. This was fall 2019,
Okay.
and we knew we were going to do that, but we didn't know what we were going to do. Timing is
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Something big was about to happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And so we had this like kind of all in worship night. And my husband, John, he was real excited that we were going to change something. And sometimes he gets too excited. And in front of everyone that night, he was like, and we're canceling small groups and we're going to do something new. And our staff text was blowing up. We're like, I cannot believe you just did that. So that really put a stake in the ground of we've got to figure this out now. And
Mhm.
starting in February of 2020, we were like, okay, we just want to create a cohesive experience for everybody. So we were like, we're going to do some in-person stuff using some different teaching and active learning strategies and all of that. We did 2 weeks in our building, and then obviously everything shut down. So then the next week, we switched everything to Zoom. We were just working off of a Google Doc, and me and the coaches were going back and forth of what each track was going to look like. And so, but honestly, for us, that pushed us to develop and work with the technology that we had. And it actually helped us to make something that was sustainable. So
Okay.
we were forced into it, but the main filter was those adult learning strategies. So one little example of that would be that as adults we have to interact with something, a piece of material or content, 7 different ways before we actually really learn it and internalize it. So that's not hearing it
Feel
seven
that. I feel that when you say that.
right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not hearing it 7 times. It's like we have to interact with it in 7 different ways before we
Wow.
actually start to get it. And so that's one of our filters that we use when we're designing tracks. Some other filters are just we want to make them unique to us and to our church and to our context. And so we're trying to speak to what we notice going on in our community and have maybe some familiar voices speak into that. We want them to be fun and delightful. We always ask like, how are we engaging like the head, heart, and body? And then another big one is that we want any of the tracks or programs we use to be dynamic and not static. And so
Okay.
what I mean by that is like we aren't trying to have like a production line of like creating a bunch of toasters that are all the same. Like we want it to be more like electricity. Like we're trying to like activate
Yeah.
people into following Jesus and discovering what that means for them. And so that means that things are going to change a lot along the way, and we're not going to stop creating. But sorry, that was a
Yes.
lot.
No, that's great. I love that. So what I took out of that is everybody cancel your small groups, shut your church down, go online, get some Google Docs. No, I'm just kidding. So
Yeah, yeah, it was a
that
really
was
easy
the
way
that
to
was
do
the
it.
hand you guys were dealt. Um, so I know you mentioned leaders and facilitators, things like that. Um, and you may have already said this, but I want you to zero in on that and talk about like what role these leaders in this model in these tracks, what role they play, and how do you maybe even equip them differently than you would like a traditional small group leader?
So
Or
we
is it
call
just the same? Or is it not different?
I mean, depending on how people train their small group leaders, I'm sure there is a lot of overlap. Like I don't think we recreated the wheel here.
Yeah.
But we do call them coaches because we want
Okay.
to identify that they're not mentors, they're not counselors, they're not pastors, but their job is to like coach this group of people and like push them towards their next steps and like call things out in them.
Yeah.
And it's for a specific season of time. It's not like a lifelong commitment they're making. Um, I think we do our trainings really well. Our discipleship director has so much creativity that goes into those. And so in our trainings, we focus a lot on being good listeners, active listeners, on asking questions. There's a lot of training in like how to ask questions, what kind of questions. We do a lot of role playing conversationally, and we're trying to get them to be aware of culture because the coaches are the culture carriers. And so we call it, they're always on the lookout for cultural weeds. And so we like give them different scenarios that they have to like respond to as if they were in a group. And so again, it's
Uh,
a lot of interactive stuff with our
yeah.
training. We do a 1 day in the fall, we do coach camp, which is just super fun and really creative and active and bonding as a team, which I'm sure so many people have different iterations of what that looks like. But that's coach camp is like, you don't want to miss coach camp.
Sounds fun to me. I'm in. Shoot me the dates.
Yeah.
So with all that said, that's thank you. That kind of helps give us a good picture. So out of all that, like, what would you say, here's what we're seeing out of all that that is working particularly well in these new environments we've created. Like this piece of it, it's not all perfect, but man, this piece is killing it, and we're seeing great fruit from it. What would you say?
I think the fact that we are able to curate content for people. So, a good bit of it we write and create ourselves, but we also use existing resources and books and so we're able to create each track in a way that really meets the needs of our community. And because we're able to do that, like people can have access to like any kind of resources they want, but they trust us. And so we're able to curate something for them. And so it's like this path they can take.
Okay.
Um, and honestly, people have continued to do it. I did not expect people to rise to the occasion to the degree that they have. And so it has shown me that people are capable of making that type of commitment. Um, and then some surprising things that have come from it that have been huge wins are now we intentionally make our groups intergenerational. And so we don't do them by area of town or a lot of other factors that if we had, 300 groups, maybe we could do, but we look at like all the groups of people signing up and we make sure as much as possible that they're all intergenerational. We did not know though the impact that that would have on our church.
Okay.
And it has been like the biggest win seeing the different intergenerational relationships happening.
Which that's different because I know typically a lot of times people are like stage of life, new parents, new marrieds, empty nesters are over here by themselves. So you're saying you intentionally go, no, no, we're putting the 20-year-old with the empty nesters, like, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying intergenerational?
Absolutely. And I
Okay.
mean, my parents just started coming to our church a couple years ago and jumped into discipleship. They're both around 70. And their group this past year was they had two 18-year-olds in the group. They had someone from honestly every stage of life in between 18 and 70. And they actually, my parents just moved in with us 2 weeks ago. And who showed up to move them in? Their discipleship group. And so,
Uh,
but like they're really good friends with them. And it's just been so cool, even just personally, to watch that happen in my own family has been awesome.
I love that. No, I love when it gets down. I love when we go from like, hey, there was a need to we tried something to now there's a specific person story example of somebody who's been, positively impacted by this new approach. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
I will say too, another thing that's working that, we wanted to happen, but we didn't know what would happen is the men. The men in our church there's something going on where there is like a hunger for growth
mhm,
and they are in groups and there's like this level of vulnerability that has changed. And we
mhm.
can like track it back. Like it has just changed and we feel it and see it in lots of different ways, but that has been really cool because it has traditionally been harder to gather men
Yeah.
and to see that happen. So
And
that's
do
been
you attribute that to the higher bar of like homework or different like what aspect of that do you think inspired the men the most to go to the next
I
level?
mean, I I don't actually know really. I would guess that it has a ton to do with the coaches and
Oh,
like
oh
their
yeah.
particular ownership over it, but also that there like is a path, I think. Like there's like purpose, there's a start and an end. It's not just we gather together to talk about our lives. That
Uh-huh.
happens, but
Yeah,
like it happens as a surprise, I think.
yeah, yeah. Gotcha. We're working together toward a goal
Yeah,
mentality. Yeah, yeah.
that's my guess.
Okay. No, I love that. I love that. I know you mentioned the one story. Did you have any other stories or examples before we move out of that to the next section?
I mean, I will. So, I mean, I've got a lot of stories, but there's this one cool one of this guy named Peter who, well, I will say this. We show every Sunday, we share like a story video of someone just sharing what God's been doing in their life. And one of the ways I'm assuming a lot of you are wondering, like, how do you know it's working? One of the ways we know it's working is that we show story videos more often than not, there is a mention of their discipleship group or their discipleship track or what God has done through that.
Yeah.
And so one of the stories is this man named Peter who had just come to Hill City, really broken. A friend invited him, and he was there for about a year, just kind of anonymously, and then decided to go ahead and sign up for discipleship. His group was unbelievable. There was like just crazy stories of vulnerability and connection that happened there. But he described it as like that is where God transformed him. And he shared, we have this like big event at the end of every year where a handful of people share on stage. And, he was weeping, we were weeping. And then now he's now been a coach a couple times and is actively recruiting other coaches and is like one of our greatest leaders. So anyway,
Love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love how you're like people right now are going, how do you know this is working? Well, look, I'm gonna go the other way. Let's get even more real and go, what what's not working? What about this has been even harder than you expected? Because it all sounds like, hey, John gets up, we're canceling groups, we're doing something different, and it all sounds great and it's all exciting, and then you start dreaming and it's fun, and then you start trying to implement, and what's been like, oh man, we did not expect or anticipate how difficult this aspect of it would be.
right. I mean, the people are not always easy, right?
No way.
um, No, so one small one is just even in like it's funny like the dynamics of people. We have different track names and we have this one, it was called Multiplying, and we were really excited about it. It's like we want to multiply the kingdom of God and like all this. And year after year, people like only a couple people would sign up for it, but like our aligning track, which is about like self-awareness and all of that, would be packed out. And we're like so frustrated because the people that would take the multiplying track loved it, but
Yeah.
other people weren't signing up because it like wasn't about them, like even
Yeah.
so we've just noticed even in like the language of like describing tracks, like
Yeah.
what
Well,
people
they're
are.
like, whoa, they're just trying to sneak me into an evangelism training.
Yes.
They're gonna make me go out on the street and ask random people questions about going to heaven. Yeah, okay.
And honestly, that's why people didn't sign up. So we kept the track, we changed the name to trick more people into taking it.
I
And
love
so it's working a little bit. Don't tell people church that,
it.
um but I do think there are two things that have been really difficult as far as like sticking with the vision. And one, anybody who does groups, this has continued to be a problem with us, even though our model looks a little different. And that is getting people on board to switching to a new group on the next round.
Yeah,
The relationship works and they love each other and they want to stay together forever. And so it's like wrestling with that tension of like, that's good, it worked.
yeah,
And if we had stopped in the beginning, we would still only have 10 groups because no one would have been raised up as a leader and there wouldn't have been space for anybody else. So it's getting even coaches on board with that.
yeah,
It's just that is like something that we are having to say and talk a lot about. And then the
absolutely.
other thing, it also applies to vision, is I mentioned the intergenerational groups, but keeping people connected to being with people that are different than them. And we have so many requests on, you know, like if we said yes to every request, we would have separate groups for people of color, for boomers, for moms of little kids, for young professionals. Everybody wants their own ministry. And it's great because they want to be connected with people that are like them, and we get that. But that would leave no one. Like everybody would be separate, and it would take
Yeah.
all of those different voices that matter so much out of the tracks and the groups. So we have had to just continue to be really clear about where we're headed,
Mhm.
and point people to other opportunities to connect with people in the same stage of life as them and stuff. But those are the two cultural things that we've had to really fight for, have been those.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So that kind of leads to this next question. So like if you could rewind time, boom, 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 back to 2019, John stands up on the stage. If you could go back to then, what would you do differently? Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently, when you first started making this shift, if you could go back and do that again?
Right. Well, I would rewind a little further and tell John
Oh,
not to make that
okay.
announcement.
Okay,
But
I didn't go back far enough. Let's go back 10 seconds before that.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so one of the big things that we have learned and that has changed over the years is that we have taken some like really just key foundational spiritual practices and made sure that they are woven into all of the tracks. So, for example, we don't have a track that's like focused on prayer, but prayer is a piece that we look at every track and are like, okay, how is this woven in here? How would people grow during the course of this track? And that's something that our discipleship director has worked so hard and been really passionate about putting in there. Um, and so I'm getting to what we do differently, but because of that, a way that we have seen fruit traditionally, honestly, our church has not been good at prayer, which sounds horrible. But over the years, we've
Shame,
tried
shame.
different things, it's like, we're like, come to this prayer meeting and no one comes. And, like there's just been a lot of that and haven't gained traction or passion around prayer, but we want to. And so the really big difference is these tracks and the way people have been trained, and like they're learning to pray out loud for the first time. And that's like always a goal that the coach tells people. It's like, hey, we want everyone to feel comfortable praying out loud by the end of our time together. And so this past Easter, we were like, let's try a prayer service again on Holy Week. And we did it in one of the smaller rooms that we gather in where we first had our services because we knew not many people would show
Yeah,
up.
gotta heat the room, make it
Yeah,
pack
yeah,
it,
our faith was so big. We had it in
pack out the supply closet.
yes. And so, but I'm telling you what, it was packed out, standing room only. We literally couldn't fit everyone in the room. And we did a couple different things where people were praying, in groups over things. And like the voices praying was so overwhelming. And so it was like this mark of maturity for our church that we have not had before. But I say all that because I wish that we had started doing that in the beginning. I wish that we had like woven that in from the beginning. And so now, even looking back, generosity is one that we want, that's like it needs to be woven into all the
Oh
tracks.
yeah.
We have
Okay.
one track that has like a bigger focus on it, um but I would go back and be like, all right, what are the big pieces that have got to be everywhere so that no matter what somebody signs up for, they're growing in this like really crucial area of
Yeah.
development. And so yeah, the generosity one, that one we're trying to like backtrack and fit in places, but it's taken a lot of work.
I love that concept of some things are meant to be woven throughout all the tracks of like, so oh no, here's our prayer one, but 99% of people never sign up for that one. How do we weave it through everything? Same thing with, hey, here's how to learn how to be more generous and invest more in the kingdom of God, but nobody ever signs up. No,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
weave that
Can't
through
speak past
everything.
us anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I love that concept. So so what about just those are two good practical things you do different. What about just mindsets or assumptions that you had early on, kind of going into it, maybe in something you were naive about, or something like that, that kind of changed as you start trying things out? You're like, okay, maybe is it the going from 3 to 9? Is it like what are some mindsets or things that changed throughout the process of actually doing it?
Yeah, I mean, we originally said that we would do no more than 5 tracks and like that was it. Um because we didn't want people to like be paralyzed by choice and like these are the crucial things they need to know. But in a shocking turn of events, we're like, oh, there's more stuff people need to know. And it's like we've created this structure that we can be creative within. And so we kind of can't stop creating tracks, but
Okay.
you might need to start taking some off and then, replacing and cycling
No,
them.
it's the McRib. You put it on the menu, you take it off the menu, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, but we're not taking that multiplying one away until everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I will say we started out doing, we had two semesters per year. And so there were like two on-ramps and it was kind of just like always going. And we really were bought into that. And then started, and honestly, our coaches were bought in too. They're like, yes, this is awesome. And I was like, you guys are going to sneakily all get burnout at the same time. And I'm really nervous about that. And so we made the switch to doing September to May. So it's a longer track.
Okay.
It's a longer commitment time-wise, but we
A
actually
break. Well,
there
has
are
that break?
there are little breaks in between. So there's like
No, I
off.
mean, it's a longer, you go longer, but then you have a longer break.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
the summer is all off.
Okay.
Um, and we made that switch because we felt like the content needed a little more breathing room. So we did not add content, we just stretched it.
Hmm.
And then that also gave us just internally space to like train coaches and not be in like crazy mode all the time. And then
Hmm.
it also gave us the summers where we can do something as a whole church together if we want to focus on something. So the shift in rhythm has been a big one that now we've been in for the last 2 years. Um, and that has been one that has worked for us. But I honestly think the shorter time frames in the beginning did help us gain more traction because people were quicker to sign up for it. It gave us, a shorter time frame to be able to change stuff for the next round instead of waiting a whole year. So that was definitely a shift since we've started.
Okay. Good. That's helpful. Um, with that said, let's talk future. Like, what are you guys dreaming about, planning to do next that you haven't implemented yet, but you've been thinking about it, wanting to do? What are you gonna unveil, when it comes to relational discipleship? Like what's still in the kitchen that hasn't been served yet?
Yeah. So, well, like I mentioned, we kind of can't stop creating tracks. So there's a lot that's kind of percolating up here for future tracks. And this year we are adding something. So it's just about to start, but we created a new track that you have to have a little more buy-in to be a part of, but there's also some more experiential learning
Okay.
involved. So we're working with a couple different nonprofits that are partners of ours to create experiences for people. Um,
Hmm.
to get out of the small group or home environment. So that's something. One of those is, to give you an example, there is an organization that the leader of comes to our church and it's called Cultural Encounters, and she goes to different immigrant run restaurants and creates these like intercultural dinners where people are hearing people's stories and learning new things. And we have a peacemaking track, and at one of her dinners will be a part of that at a local restaurant, getting to know kind of the immigrant population that's growing around us.
Love
Then
that.
another thing that I don't know, I've just been dreaming about a lot personally is, what does it look like to have formation trips that are maybe outside of the tracks, or I don't know, they could be in them or after them or something like that. But what does it look like to do a trip that is formational and in one of many ways, getting out and doing hard things in nature,
Yeah.
just what all of that does to our brains and those shared experiences with people. And so I grew up doing missions trips in a
Yep.
way that may have harmed the world, not sure. Um, but what does it look like to do formation trips? Because when I look back at my experiences, I'm like, really, it's what it formed in me of how I want to interact with the world and what I learned. So anyway, those are some of the things.
I love that. That's good. All right, we're about to go to Q&A. So if you haven't put your questions in the chat yet, go ahead and put them in there now. Before we go to Q&A though, Lacy, I'd love you just to, what encouragement or advice would you give to other church leaders who are feeling stuck in their small group model but don't know exactly where to start, or what would you say to these guys?
So I would say just go for it. Um, notice, just notice things. I think the first step is to notice things. What are you doing for discipleship? And is it working? And how do you know if it's working or not? And that might come out, and you might be a person that focuses on metrics. You might be a person that focuses on stories, but like, how do you know if it's working? What is the culture of your church? And maybe start even noticing some holes or some areas of immaturity. And then it's like, okay, how do we integrate things that can speak to that and help develop that in people? We have tracks, there's small groups, there's a lot of different models, but really everything we're doing is discipleship. And so we don't
Right.
want to like silo it out, but if you can look culturally at your church, whatever area of influence you have, how do
Mhm.
you like create that like conversation and culture of discipleship? And then honestly, I would say like just change something and
Yeah.
don't waste time. I think we can overthink stuff, but what's cool about being church leaders in this time that we're given is that like we get to make up how to do it. And so
Yeah.
try something. And if it stinks, then try something else. But when you try things, it also, I think, keeps your people flexible.
Yeah.
Um, and so you're not like married to the model, but you're just like open to change because you're all headed in the same direction.
That's good. Thank you. That's helpful. Somebody somewhere in here needed to hear that for sure. All right, so here we got some questions, lots of questions actually. So let's roll. You ready to roll through these? Well,
Ready.
I'll just read them out, and you're riffing and going
Okay.
through it. Does that sound good? Need a break
Sounds
or
good.
water break or anything?
I'm good.
All right. All right, let's go through. The first one, this one is great. So this is rewinding all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about the culture, shifting the culture. And I want to know, okay, what specifically did you do to shift your culture before you started implementing the trap model and all that kind of stuff?
Um, One huge thing is that, so my husband John is the primary teacher. He talked about it a lot from the stage. And
Okay.
he continued to say, he was like, Sundays are awesome and really important, but the most important thing that happens in our church is discipleship. He
This
said that
was woven into his messages.
into his messages and or like at the start of a message when we're talking about things going on, but it
Okay.
it was and continues honestly to be in there all the time. And
Okay.
what that also helped do was that helped bolster up our coaches to take ownership. They're like, oh, I'm a part of the most important thing that happens in our church. um
So what was that language he says again?
he always says discipleship is the most important thing that happens in
Okay.
our church.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So there's that. We, as a staff, our whole staff is really bought in. And honestly, we have never required or even asked them to do like discipleship tracks. They're all leading different ministries and doing so much. But almost every member of our staff is either in or coaching a track because they wanted to. So that I think that matters a lot. Not that you would have to demand it, but it's been influential for us. We tell a lot of stories about it. And so like I mentioned, those story videos, we didn't
Yeah.
always do story videos, but in Instagram posts and emails, like we're talking about what is happening in discipleship.
Yep.
And then we really are talking about it a lot. So as a staff, we will go up to people and be like, hey, like what track are you taking? Like, what do you like about it? Who's your coach? And like, so again, it's in the water people are swimming in.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. All right, practical question. All the way
Yep.
again, all the way back at the beginning. You said we start with three tracks.
Yep.
What were the three tracks? The
So
original
it's
three.
the original three were exploring, building, and aligning. Exploring, like for example, we use starting point in that, but then
Yeah.
we have two other sessions that we tack on to that. So that's for people asking big questions or wanting to get back to foundational stuff. Building was like I want to build and grow my faith. How do I read my Bible? What are some foundational stuff? And then aligning was our like emotional health, self-awareness, that type of thing.
Oh, okay, cool. Are all three of those still three of the nine or no?
They are. The building one got removed for a couple years because an author that we chose to use made some real big mistakes and we
Mm.
just couldn't do it anymore. So we had to
To
switch up.
recurate. You had to
Yes.
recurate. Okay. And then is there another one? You don't want to give all the other six, I guess, but is there another one of the nine now that you can kind of give detail about, what's it focused on and things like that?
Sure. I think one of the more maybe not as obvious ones is we have one called thinking. And so that's one where we really wanted to train our folks on how to think, not what to think. And that was developed during a political season where we just noticed, how people were responding to others online and stuff like that. And so we're like, oh, we got to speak into this. And so,
That must be unique to Richmond. I've never heard of
yeah,
any.
I don't think anybody else started it. It's really hard where we are. But so that one, like, we have a big focus on wisdom and like studying the wisdom literature and have curated some other things around it. But it's a lot of hard discussions about like how we think and what lies we might believe and stuff like that.
Okay, that's great. Here's another very practical one. How do you deal with busyness? Just people or just busy practices, travel, ball, you name it, work, travel, all that kind of stuff. How do you deal with busyness, where people join but then they don't remain consistent in attendance and all that?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm sure there are tons of people that don't sign up because they're busy. But I read something several years back that like it was like one of those Barna emails of they surveyed a bunch of people and pastors thought that all the people coming to their churches weren't involved in discipleship because they were busy, but the people that were asked said that they just weren't motivated.
Yeah.
And so I think in changing the culture, that has helped with that.
Mhm.
Because again, their friends are doing it. They're hearing people talk about it. They're hearing about the difference that's being made. But it's still people being people. And we
Yeah.
definitely have people that like will sign up and then drop out and all of that. I think our retention rate is definitely a lot higher than when we were doing small groups, but we're really clear up front about what the commitment is, and
Hmm.
we're not going to chase you down to do it. So we want people who want to do it and want to learn, and so yeah, we're just really upfront about it, which helps kind of weed people out from the start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And most of the time people make time for the things that they want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I mean, all you have to do is if people say they're too busy, just ask them to check their screen time.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like you got an extra 8 hours a week there.
Exactly.
Let's let's look at this next one. So, um, you kind of mentioned how it was hard to get people to move to the next group or something like that. So I'm assuming they're doing this, but people are asking, so do people in the tracks together, do they spend time with each other outside of the track? And how is the community between the people developing in that track? Or is it mainly about learning, or are they like also getting what you would get from a, small group family where we hang out and all that kind of stuff?
Right. No, that's a good question. Honestly, it depends group to group. Our all women's groups tend
Hmm.
to like bond so quickly and oftentimes we'll do a lot of life outside of that together. So we have half of our tracks are same sex and half of them are co-ed.
Hmm.
And so that piece does look differently. The way we block out our calendar for the year is that each session is broken up into three different kinds of weeks. So we
Okay.
have content weeks. That's where you got to do your homework and then you show up, you're talking about it kind of thing. We have connection weeks. And so
Mhm.
that's where the purpose of that gathering is just to hang out. So we give people ideas they have dinners together. They're creative with how they spend their time. It's just connection. And then we
So
have
our small group people that love just hanging out and eating chips and salsa, they get a week, right?
They get a week. Yep. And that has been we've intentionally built it so there's like connection week and then like maybe 3 content weeks and then a connection week and then a break. And
Okay,
so we work it in with the normal, just rhythm of the calendar with holidays and stuff like that. But yeah, it's built in there. And we will do occasionally like hey, this is a connection week for everybody. So we're doing a trivia night at the church. Show up with your group.
gotcha. All right, and I think I interrupted you. There were three, right? Content, connection, and what was the third one you
Oh,
said?
breaks. So they just
Oh,
have weeks.
breaks. Oh,
Yep.
that the break. See, I've been around church so long. I was waiting for another C word, and you
I
left.
know.
I
We
love
need
it. Okay. Okay. So this is a great question. How do you measure the impact or the success of a track? Like, what are the goals? Like, what are you looking at to know we need to scrap that one, or man, that one's killing it?
Yeah. Um, so we ask coaches to give us feedback every single week. So they have a form that they fill out. So as the track is going, we are noticing things and making changes. And like we're asking them specific questions, even like, hey, are there questions that aren't working that people are getting hung up on? And so if there's a group that meets on a Monday, we might get feedback and have something changed by the time the Wednesday groups meet kind of thing. It's not always that fast, but we are making real time changes. We also have, I mean, we have participants like fill out surveys and all of that. One of the ways, though, is that every track has a project at the end that kind of helps them summarize their learning and sharing with the group. And so when we see the projects and hear the stories about the projects, that's when we know that something hit. And there have been times where they haven't. And the group is like, well, we didn't really know what to do. There have been total fails with projects. We're like, okay, we gotta change a lot there.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, I got one last question to ask you, Lacy. But before we get to that last question, I want to tell everybody about next month's webinar that we got going on with your friend Ashley McNary is going to be joining me from Heartland Church up in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And next month's webinar is going to be called "Keep Them Coming Back: Creating Irresistible Church Experiences." And so this one hits home to me. I know I worked at a church one time where I built a relationship with someone that did not know Jesus, had been out of church for years and years and years, and I could not invite them to my church because my church was not designed with them in mind. I know everybody listening probably has people like you invited somebody and then you have those cringe moments of like, oh, that's insider. They're not going to understand this. This isn't taking the guest in mind. It's definitely not taking unchurched people into account. And so next month's webinar, we're going to be unpacking another one of our ICN distinctives, which is irresistible environments. It's going to be an interview with Ashley McNary from Heartland Church, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. It's going to be September the 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you throw that on your calendar, and we'll have another great conversation there.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, gonna be awesome. All right, Lacy, last question before we wrap up. Can you share more about the amazing coach camp that you invited me to that I'm going to be coming to? Can you share more information about that? The agenda, the qualifications, anything you think would be helpful, a little deeper into the weeds than you were the first time around.
So, I mean, honestly, Coach Camp it's kind of weird. But we like to do things in weird ways sometimes. So, one year the theme was Mr. Rogers themed. And so we just think about the whole experience for the coaches walking. And so it's like a thank you and development training day. And so like they came in and we had gone to thrift stores and bought like a bunch of cardigans. So anybody that wanted to wear a cardigan wore that. We had like soup. It was like a cozy. It was in the winter. We had them in groups do different like art projects that helped them like explain and share about and celebrate what was going on in their group. We do a lot of things with like art, with group sharing, with prayer, specific times of praying. We usually have a section of time where people are able to like problem solve with other coaches that are coaching the same track as them.
Mhm.
There's always some kind of moment of like surprise and delight. So for that one, we hired a trolley to come and take us on a
Oh,
of
yeah.
Richmond. Last year's theme was Ted Lasso themed. And so
Okay.
it was like literal coach camp. And we had like locker room talks and like, people trying to like galvanize them and inspire them. And so we just pick a different theme and we decide what they need training on and try to create some interactive learning to so that they can experience it that way, but also them even just experiencing the act of learning helps them know how to do it better too. So
Yeah. Okay. And so outside of the tour, though, these are usually at your space, at your building, or are they in different locations?
they've been different locations. We
Okay.
did
So they're
we
always
did one at like a campground that
okay.
was near us, and the last two have been in our space. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah,
And these are training coaches that have already been through your process and are approved and are coaches, right? This isn't a recruiting tool, or is it both?
no, it's for coaches already on. So they start in September coaching, so they already would have been coaching for 2 months.
Okay.
And then we have this coach camp. So some of them might be new, some of them might have been coaching for years. And then I forgot what I was gonna say, but we do sometimes there will be some like people that we really want to be coaches that were like just come to coach camp to see, but that's not our main goal there. Oh, I was gonna say we also have coaches that are on the bench. So they're
Mm.
some of our main coaches, but they're taking a year off. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the benched coaches also are a part of coach camp.
Oh, okay.
I'm engaged.
Good, good. And then what are your qualifications for coaches? No
They
Jesus.
Gotta love Jesus. We have like an application that they fill out, but essentially it's somebody's faith who you would want others to emulate
Mm,
and who are all in on Jesus and living a life that models that. When we
mhm.
talk about coaches, that we talk about it like that is our highest level of
Okay.
leadership other than like staff. So
Yeah.
it's a really high bar and we consider those they're at the same level as like our students small group leaders. It's
Right.
that level
That makes
when we talk about it.
Lacy, thank you so much. This has been so helpful, so challenging, inspiring. I'm sure everybody on here has even more questions that they wish they could get to, but this has been so helpful. Thank you for laying this out here. Thank you for your willingness to share, posture of humility. We love all this. We love having you guys as a partner church and partners in this network. So thank you for everything you do, innovating, sharing. And man, what a cool thing you guys are doing there at Hill City. And so, yeah, thank you so much for giving your time and effort and energy to be on here today and help some people around the world. So we love it. We love it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for asking. It was
Yeah.
big on.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next month. If you want to jump on September 16th, 2 p.m., we jump into Irresistible Environment. So have a great rest of the day. See you guys later. Thank you.